such elections and
act. But we need to particularize the kind of unity we're referring to.
Propagandist for the government, so wow. I don't expect him to say something else. Lai Mohammed is in the likes of Walter Fonagoro and who was that? Chukwumerije for Babangida in those days. They could utter what they want in defense of their principal, who is the president, but that does not remove the truth and the fact of what has existed. Nigeria has been a killing field in the last 4 years, and the government seems to just be sleeping. We have had it so, we have not had it that this bad. It's as if Nigeria is inside a very serious war. If you go to global index of terrorism, deaths occasioned by terrorism, you find out that Nigeria is high. The killings in Nigeria is far more than that is obtainable in Yemen, in Afghanistan, and in places where wars are actually in Syria.
Of course, I remember that.
In places where wars are going on.
We were higher than Pakistan.
We are higher than those places. Far at a point combined. So
yeah.
The deaths in the last 4 years are in the hundreds of thousands, and yet we are not at war.
But you see, these things are.
When
I'm sorry. No, but you see, these things seem to be reported by, let's say, Amnesty International or Transparency International, and then we see the figures. People also blame us, the press. They blame security agencies that we do not necessarily pay much attention to these killings, these deaths. Instead, we're reporting more of who said what, and
the politicians. Has always been that there is fear in the air. What is happening in America is gradually coming to Nigeria. You see, when a particular group of people start doing some certain things, and you don't call them by their name, you say when you call their name, you see it's ethnicity, ethnic bigotry, or when you call it, you say it's religious derogation. That's what is happening. You call something that says Islamophobia in America. That is what is gradually coming back here. I want to take Obasanjo just 2 keywords. He said Fulanization, which is referring to the Fulani ethnic stock. And he said Islamization, which is referring to the ISWAP and all those ISIS, Boko Haram, and all those that have lodged in the Chad and Mali and made inroads to Nigeria. Obasanjo is the #1 international diplomat in Africa. So for people like Lai Mohammed to just talk things against Obasanjo, he's diminishing his own what status. It is his own status is diminishing because the world respects Obasanjo than him. The world does not even know who Lai Mohammed is anyway.
Wow.
So the world
he's the Minister for Information and Culture
beyond Nigeria. Who knows him? So okay. The world recognizes Obasanjo is the current president of the Union of Former World Heads of States. He's the #1 diplomat for Africa. He goes on a lot of missions for United Nations in Africa. So for Lai Mohammed, it's just that we don't respect our own. Even if you disagree with him, you don't use those kind of words. So it's first of all disrespect from a Yoruba angle. Omoluabi, as they call Yoruba, a respectable child, cannot talk to an elder like that. So when they go to these politics, I don't know whether they throw their manners away. Lai Mohammed is not supposed to even address an Obasanjo that way.
Okay.
Then when we come to the other one, the issue that he has raised. Who are those killing Nigerians in their farmsteads, burning up places, holding AK-47? There are a lot of video evidences. There are a lot of photographs. There are a lot of satellite images saying these things. Who are those committing that did wipe that farmlands in Benue, in Enugu State, in Ekiti, in different places? They are the same people from the same place, and we are afraid to call them by their name. And there are bold people who have come out to call them by their names. Obasanjo has called them by their names, called them by the name of their ethnic stock, called them by their name of the religion. So if there are people who are spoiling...
But can we generalize?
You cannot generalize, but people who are committing...
But that's what this statement is doing. There's so many Fulanis who are out there who are going about their businesses and not getting up to no good. So can you really lump all of them together?
If somebody from your ethnic stock commits a crime, and they said, if a Yoruba person commits a crime, they say Yoruba man has committed it. Is it not a Yoruba man? Or an Igbo man commits a crime, they say an Igbo man did this. Is it not the person who committed the crime? Is not an Igbo man. But that does not. And we are
But then you
we are
don't
speaking
call them-
English here. We are not generalizing. We are not saying all Igbo men, or all Igbos, or Yorubas, or Fulanis.
What does Fulanization mean?
Well, we have to ask Obasanjo the lexicon of that, the new lexicon he created.
Because that also points to the whole stock of people.
It points to the no. He's not. Unlike you and I, we're afraid to call names. He's not afraid. He has called the name. So for him, do your worst.
Okay.
I get to the point. So he has called the names. He has called 2 names that we are all afraid to call, and he has mentioned them by their name. So for him, do your worst. What you and I may not get scot-free from it.
Okay, let me come back to you, Kunu. Both of you seem to be on the same page, agreeing with the fact that he has some truth in what he has said. But there are people who are also saying Obasanjo is part of the Security Council. I think the State Council of State. Yes, they all sit with the president. They have these meetings. Why hasn't he communicated this there instead of writing letters and, you know, giving those press briefings or waiting to go to those events to talk about it? If this is such, if it's been impressing on him that much, how come he's not spoken to the president? It's not like he doesn't have, you know, access to the president.
Well, I have to say that the Council of State only occupies an advisory role, and the advice or pieces of advice may be jettisoned or accepted. It is out of respect for them and the fact that they have actually steered the nation supposedly in positive directions, and that's why they merit such position that they occupy, having left office. But I have to say, whatever it is they say wouldn't be binding if the president doesn't see it as something that you can term proper wisdom to ameliorate an issue. So that established, I'd like you to understand that there are lots of things that would make you want to piece A and B, or C and D, or all the letters of the alphabet to make words before you go to phrases, then you get to clauses. I must say this very carefully, that only recently the government of Nigeria, despite the fact that we have radio Nigeria stations across the country where in their respective states, they actually broadcast in local languages, and if there are city centers, for instance, the radio Nigeria that is in Lagos and the one that is in Ibadan, broadcast Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba. Then if you go to the interiors, there are programs that people do in local languages. But the federal government recently secured an amplified modulation license, radio license, in the name of wanting to at least mitigate the problem of Fulani and farmers' crisis, and the language of broadcast will be in Fulfulde. Fulfulde is the language of the Fulanis. The constitution of this country recognizes, besides English language and French, Igbo, Yoruba, and Hausa, and curtains are drawn. So that simply means up north, they could do their legislative proceedings with the Hausa language. The money taken from the coffers of government are taxpayers' money being used for something that is not constitutionally supported. That simply then means that if you feel indeed that you want to be just, and you have thus created a radio station whose language of broadcast is in Fulfulde, and this obviously is meant to address the problems of supposed clashes between the herders and the farmers, then you have to create again across all the regions where there have been crises, radio stations with government money where the language of broadcast must be those places where their farms have been affected. So if there have been attacks repeatedly in Agbo, you must create a radio station in Agbo where they speak Agbo. If the people were attacked in Ibadan or Iseyin, you have to create a radio station for them where the language of broadcast will be the language spoken in that area to address their needs, and it also has to be on the amplified modulation scheme. Then it becomes more painful. The frequency modulation line oftentimes is what people assess. Why do you take it to the AM? That simply means the AM travels faster. As a matter of fact, the BBC radio used to operate on the what? The shortwave and the amplified modulation system years ago, where you could reach further. If you do an analysis of where Fulanis are located, the Futa Jalons, the Senegambia region, you come to Guinea and all those places, the amplified modulation that you have created, the license you have created, will reach further and who perhaps will have the time to listen oftentimes to a language that over 90% of Nigerians don't speak. In the entire West Africa, the Fulanis are still less in their spectrum than 40-50%. So it's a whole lot of complexity that we cannot but talk about.
So why do you suppose that government is, trying to thread carefully on this issue instead of addressing it headlong?
From what he said, it's just an indictment. The government has indicted itself already by agreeing to the fact that the Fulanis are responsible for this farmer clashes. Because he said he wanted to create that radio station to talk to the Fulani.
Yes, they've secured the license already.
So if they are talking to the Fulani herdsmen because of herdsmen-farmer clashes, that means it's the Fulani herdsmen that are causing the crisis. Now, as he said, the AM has no state boundaries. The FM has short-range frequencies so that it can be controlled. You can't go beyond amnesty or beyond the state. Now, you are creating an amplifier modulation system that can travel far across all the states in Nigeria.
Maybe the excuse is that the Fulanis are nomads.
Talking to who?
And so they're moving.
Talking to nomads, the Igbos are what? Are Igbos not everywhere in this part of the country? Have you created a frequency to talk to Igbos? So I think the issue now is that every day, this government is creating controversies and are making the other parts of the country very, very uncomfortable. First of all, the whole security architecture, the leadership of the whole security architecture in Nigeria are northerners of the same religion. Not just any northerner, the same ethnic bloc, the same religion.
Well, you have, you have a handful.
It's already dangerous. We are creating a dangerous palpitation for others. Because not even in the military era did we have the kind of assemblage of military and security hierarchy the way we do it today. Even the military were trying to balance out. During Babangida, it was a BTQ balancing out, and all those kind of people were balanced out of Abacha. There was always this semblance of balancing. Maurice Manuel Obasanjo balanced out like that. When Obasanjo was there, Yar'Adua balanced out. They were always creating this thing. And then the army chiefs that time, there was a little bit of, picking, making sure that there's this national spread. But this time around, it was jettisoning.
Do you think that there is an agenda? Do you think that there is a deliberate attempt to do something? That is why people like
Obasanjo are saying what I say. And Obasanjo has more information, more intel than you and I. These guys get intel briefing from Interpol, from the CIA, from the FBI, from MI6. And they get all this information.
I want to say this.
So he gets the information so that we don't get. So don't just think he's just saying things for sake of it.
Before I will ask a question when you're done.
Yes, I want to say that there's this post, I think, early this week or last week in the Washington Post, where it was said very emphatically that this administration paid Fulani, I think it's 100 million, 100 billion, I think about 100 million over a particular issue. Don't also forget that it was sometime last week in Kaduna, particularly because of the Kajuru killings, where the herders there said if they are prevented from, plying their trade, that they will definitely have no alternative than to fight. And you don't fight, you kill. Now, what I'm trying to say is, in the first place, who talks about committing the crime so brazenly if there are real punitive measures without any ethnic coloration of the kind of justice you mete out to people who are offenders? I have to say that we continue to look at these things on the periphery, but they are deeper than we can imagine. And many of us have told ourselves and our families that we're not trying to be heroes here, but we're just trying to be those who are as patriotic as expectedly as we should be. If anybody speaks or tells the truth, death awaits. If you also don't speak the truth, you are not going to be able to evade death sometime in the future, or maybe when its time is up. Therefore, it is important for us to say that the trajectory, especially with security issues in this country, is not what we've had before. Do not forget that 1st January 2018, when people were massacred, pregnant women massacred, children massacred in Benue State, the defense minister of this country, the defense minister said people should try to live with their neighbors. Who says that when you have pregnant women ripped apart and innocent children's skulls torn in pieces? I think very strongly that these people are taking us for granted. And I have to also say, here on international TV, because I know the world is watching, I blame very seriously the Hausa race that have sold its birthright. If you check the history of this country, I have to tell you that these issues, of course, I know Uthman Dafodio fought the Gobe War in 1814 to address issues of injustice. Obviously, I agree. But if you check this country, the Hausas were originally there. Any other person who is not a Hausa obviously came in from another part of Africa. I'm not saying they can move them away. So why are the Hausa people, the closest to the Fulani tribe, not being able to take their birthright? If indeed they are
But that also sounds to me like you're trying to ask that, you know, we have another issue.
No, we're not even. I'm saying that if those who are closer,
because
no, please, I don't want to be misunderstood.
No, because the core of this is I know. Hold on. Please. The core of this is land. The core of this issue. The
no. That is what you see well typed out on paper is about land. Not so much about land alone, but there are other things. Dominance is another. Controlling the machinery of people's existence is another. And I want to say that I'm not asking that they unseat Fulani people. I'm saying that if people are closest to you in religion and ethnicity, and what they are getting accused of repeatedly is unsavory, why can't you check them? Why can't you say, we cannot allow them to have this impression about us? It is what I'm saying.
Of course, that should be it. But then what if there is some form of rivalry already, and so there is no place for dialogue? That is where government comes in. That is where security agencies are supposed to come in. But just as you said, if the defense chief is saying, well, I mean, the issue of the headers and the grazers, farmers, yeah. He said that he said something about the fact that it was the grazing bill in some states that was responsible for.
And I have to say this, please. I don't know if my brother has something to say here because this is about us, not about me.
Well, there is a fundamental problem because I remember some years back when. The president then, he was not a president, he was a life patron of the Mieti Ala Cattle Dealers Association, MACBAN. And there was some issues with cattle people in Oyo State. And he went there to confront the governor then. I think it's Lam Adesina who was there then also. Yeah. And he says some things that Lam Adesina said, your people cannot come here to cause problem. And I get to the point. Where does a government sit down and people are killing brazenly, and you tell me you don't know where they are? You tell me they are Libyan fighters? You tell me they're sponsored by politicians?
Well, I always ask the question, if we were Libyans, we really let people come into our country and do the same?
For example, people like IPOB members, we demonstrate on the street without weapons, and you gun them down. And we are in the same country, and then the Azazaki people, we also demonstrate. And so, and then you see, look, until we really, thank God people like Obasanjo them are talking now. Because these were people that were in cahoots with them. I think the center cannot hold for both of them, all of them, because they were the people gaining from the system. Now the system is no more favorable to them. And then the thing is coming home to us. Well, Woloshek has to agree with Obasanjo this time because his own farm was also affected 2 years ago.
Okay, in going forward, because as we talk about these issues, we need to find a way forward. How do we get government to see what everybody else is seeing other than them? Because there have been calls that this group of people be prescribed, and you know the same measure of, you know, well, no, what happened to IPOB should happen to them, but they're saying they're faceless. So how do you prescribe a group of people?
They're not faceless.
Who so
MACBAN 2 weeks ago, we were told that they had a meeting, that government, Dambasa was in that meeting, and they were promised that they were negotiating 100 billion naira to be given to MACBAN, that is Miati Ala Cattle Breeders Association. So what are we talking about? They are not faceless. So please, let's remove those propaganda that they are faceless. They are not. So, so for them to really, if you want to prove Obasanjo wrong, then do the things, because Obasanjo is reacting to issues on hand. And then look at what Boko Haram did when they conquered 17 local governments during Jonathan's time. They hoisted that flag. What is that? It's not political domination. Okay. So what we are saying now is this: treat security issues seriously. The other day, the issue of people taking gold from that belongs to the nation.
Oh,
and taking it to
the
state level,
Zamfara issue is another kettle of fish. We would have to talk about it another day, but quickly, how do we impress upon government to deal with this, not with kids' gloves, but seriously?
There are no sacred cows anywhere. And anytime it appears as if you got sacred cows somewhere, then people perceive injustice and revolt. If we put on a scale the activities of IPOB, as he said, and that of the Shiites, you'd find out that they've committed less of crime than the people who kill. And I tell you, it even makes it all the more suspicious that people will kill and disappear and their security operatives. I remember the last attack. I remember the last attack they had in Adamawa. The spokesman for the community mentioned that they said they got information about an impending attack. They informed security operatives who perhaps gave them the impression they were there. And it got to a time they moved away. And soon after they moved away, they attacked them. I want to refer to the Chibok girls as well. Then I want to talk about the vice chancellor. I want to talk about the professor that they just released in Ile-Ife. When he narrated his ordeal, he said very categorically that police people stopped him, and soon after they checked and he left, somebody then made a call. And he mentioned very clearly that all the people that kidnapped him were Fulani. That has to tell you that infiltration continues to come in. And oftentimes, when they get this ransom, the money goes somewhere for certain reasons that cannot be for good. I have to say that here.
Well, it's an issue that we have to keep talking about. We have to keep raising our voices. Hopefully the federal government can hear us and do the needful. I want to thank you very much, Ambrose Igbokwe and Adeni Kunu, for speaking with us. You guys are not going. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll be looking at the progress of the Presidential Election Tribunal and, of course, the recent step down by one of the members. Stay with us. We'll be right back after the break.
The repeat broadcast at 9:30 p.m. on Plus TV.